today. Just me and Nate gonna shoot the breeze for a little bit before we get started. So Nate, good to have you here, man.
Always good to see you, man. Yeah, hopefully tech is working okay today. I think everybody is working online.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just refreshed the page. It looks like we're doing great. Hello, hello. I know there's a lot of people here from Sticky. There's a lot of people here from Show It again. Has it been a week, man, since we hung out last? Just almost, or
I feel like it's been over a week, and since that time, we did this webinar together last time, and you just crushed me on the video quality and the content quality, and I'm like, man, I gotta step up to Nate's game.
oh, that flatters me. It's pretty cool. I just watched this morning. Let's see, Jimmy Fallon had Adam Sandler on recently, and he sang a song, and it was such a good song, but like, I wish they would have had a local recording of it, because
Yeah.
it was just on Zoom or something crappy. I'm like, oh, he just crushed it, but the quality was subpar. And I know we're also we're limited to bandwidth, and everybody's eating up all of the bandwidth there is everywhere. So good to see everybody. Look, holy cow, we got Michaela, Barb, Samoa from DC, Joanne is Images. Thank you guys all for being here. Yeah, this
Hello,
will be fun.
Amanda.
I'm excited to chat again.
Yeah, me too. And I am trying out new software for going live with this webinar. So bear with me as I try to navigate everything. Nate has been gracious to help me out and give me some tips and pointers. So as a result, I ended up copying his haircut. So I was like, I gotta be more like this guy.
Oh, stop it. I love it. So I think, just as we've got questions in the comments, guys, this will, one of the comments I wanted to make once we formally go live is just how this is different. This experience is different for everybody. And I want to be empathetic to all of that. And I'll get to that in a minute, but let's just start with technology. Wherever you are, we use YouTube because it's one of the best ways, I think, it'll auto adjust the quality of the video based on the bandwidth you have. If you have any issues, I'd suggest refreshing this page. If for some reason, Chris, we have something really bad cut out, I would recommend you just plow through with the presentation, because Ecamm is going to record an HD version for you on your computer.
Got it.
And then you can just upload that later. For some reason, this breaks, and we'll get the replay out. Also know, everybody, that the replay will just live here on this page. So go ahead and grab the URL to this video. You grab it to your toolbar or bookmark it, and you can watch this over and over and over again. So that's tech. Anything else you want to cover before I give you an introduction to my audience?
No, I think I'm good. Just happy to be here. Happy to see all these people from all over the U.S., all over the world. We got some folks from Canada. Thank you for coming in. New Mexico.
Yeah,
y'all are awesome.
This is so fun. We keep breaking records for our live streams. This is just really flattering. So I want to kick it off and just set some context for everybody. I started building a relationship with the folks over at Show It a couple of years ago, and I've just always been impressed with their commitment to community and their commitment to helping photographers, also with their marketing. We're just one and the same. It's their vision, their values so closely aligned with me and my team. So I'm excited to kind of share some education. Last week, I got to come on and share some things about email marketing, and today Chris is coming to you guys to talk about website and website conversion and all of those things. I'm so excited. I think that the context I want to set is I found this post yesterday about how we're kind of all in this together, but we're all experiencing it differently and day to day. So like hour by hour, day by day, I want to make sure that we don't go too far on this. Like, I don't want anybody to feel pressure or shame or guilt for not being super productive right now. This is a very unprecedented time. At the very least, I want you guys to feel like this can just be a distraction or inspiration or something to noodle on, knowing that your whole day to day, if you have kids that you have to be homeschooling right now, be juggling schedules with your spouses like I am at home. There's a lot, and there's trying to manage and limit how much social media and news you take in. Really be gentle with yourself, be gentle with others. And with that being said, I really do think that I just want to provide the best resources we can to help be somewhat of productivity in this tricky time. So let's dig into the content within that context. Chris, why don't you take it away? I'm so excited to see what you've prepared today and to just kind of talk about the different stages of how a website can help our business, especially nowadays where there's still an opportunity for our customers to get to know us, to get to know our brand. And for a while, as we recover, we're going to be relying on our web, our websites, our funnels, all of our digital marketing to build those relationships even more. So go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Nate. Just so good being with you, and just want to plug Nate's company, Sticky Marketing Tools. Just got some great resources for you guys. And if you're a show-tier and haven't checked out all that they have to offer, I just want to encourage you to go check it out. And just want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for taking a step to figure out what to do next. Like Nate was saying, right now is the time for a lot of self-compassion. And so I hope you're having a lot of compassion on yourself. Like I know my kids are, they're going to school online from my home for the rest of the year. So they're not going back to school. And my productivity has tanked, right? And so I think it's really easy to get discouraged in a season like this. But anytime there's transition, you're just kind of figuring out a new way to live and a new way to balance. And so that's tough, but give yourself some time, give yourself some space. And I guarantee that if you just keep working, if you don't quit, it will turn back around. And, I know this is a crazy, unprecedented season that we're seeing. And, you hear a lot of things all the time. You hear like the phrase that I'm really just, if I'm going to be straight up honest with you, in this uncertain times, in these unprecedented seasons, like over and over again. And for sure, there is a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of things that we don't know what's going to happen from day to day. But at the same time, there is a lot of certainty, a lot of things that we can lean on as a people group. And one of those things is community. We have this community, Sticky Marketing Tools, Show It, Rising Tide Society. There's all of these great community bases that, man, I just want to encourage you to get plugged in. It doesn't matter where. It doesn't have to be Show It. It doesn't have to be Sticky Marketing. Like it can be wherever, but your community will carry you through this next season. And so we're going to talk about what we can do in the middle of this to make sure that we don't fall too far behind, and then to figure out some new opportunities that might be available to us. And so I'm going to bring, let's see here. Nope. There we go. Here's my slides. So here's what we're talking about. We have two opportunities. We can figure out what we're going to do to shift or what we're going to do to strengthen. And those are really kind of, if you sum it all down, those are the two things that I think it's important to focus on right now. And, as entrepreneurs, you don't figure out a system and then just expect for that system to stay in place for the rest of your life and for you to make money until the cows come home and the sun sets, right? Like good entrepreneurs are those who can see the terrain, can see what's coming on the horizon, and they learn how to shift and they learn how to pivot. And, pivoting right now, there is a huge market for different things that we've not seen before. For instance, from the beginning of the year until now, Zoom has seen an uptick in users by 2 million plus people. And that is more than they had for all of 2019, right? And so really right now, it's not that people aren't buying. It's not that people don't have needs. It's just that their needs look completely different than what they did before. And so it's our job to figure out, what do those new needs look like? How can we speak to them? And how can we make sure that we are serving our clients in a way that makes sense in this time? So that's the shifting portion. And then the next portion is strengthening what we have currently in place. And here's a prediction. And, I'm pretty sure it's going to come to pass. But when everything opens back up, right, we are going to see a flood in the marketplace, right? People are going to come back hard and heavy. And when that happens, it's the old supply and demand curve that you learned from high school economics class, right? The demand goes up over here, and so does our price. And so you have the potential coming out of this season to, potentially make more money than you ever saw before this happened. And I'm not trying to be salesy. I'm not trying to trick you into signing up for some platform or something. Like, I don't even have anything to sell today. Like this is just the reality of how economics works. Like, there's going to be a good deal of opportunity when this is all said and done. So it's so important right now to learn how to strengthen what it is that you're doing, because guaranteed there are other people out there that are doing the very same thing. They're learning how to strengthen their business, to strengthen their service, to strengthen their product. And so when this is all said and done, you want to make sure that you are on the forefront of your client's mind, of your ideal customer, so that when they reach out to somebody, they are reaching out to you. And one of the best ways that I have known how to do that is by setting up your website in such a way that it optimizes your conversion rate. And let's talk about this. Just a simple definition for conversion rate is the percentage of users who take a desired action on your website. And the best example of that is when somebody comes to your website as a visitor and leaves as a customer. So they either sign up for your service, or they sign up to schedule a call with you, to do an exploratory conversation. This is a conversion rate, right? So it's the amount of people who visit versus the amount of people who buy. So, and I want to encourage you on your website, every single website, every single page should be goal oriented. And I talk to so many people, so many business owners who view their website as somewhat of an online business card. And, I just want to encourage you, if you see yourself that way, you're actually leaving a lot of opportunity on the table that is there for you. You should have something in mind. Whenever you're building your website or redesigning your website or tweaking your website, you have to start with the end. Start with where you want people to end up, because that is the filter with which you should design and build everything out. And so if you're not doing that, today's the perfect day to think about it. And we're going to be talking about a lot of these things. But I've really found three things that are most important when it comes to optimizing your conversion rate. And I'll bring it up here. The first one is user experience. And I'm a UX designer. I'm the UX designer for Show It. So I had to talk about user experience a little bit because I love it and because I think it's really valuable. The second one is calls to action and scannability. And then the final one is testing. And I think the first two, a lot of us have probably somewhat of a decent understanding. Like, we've probably heard a few things here and there, about user experience, about making sure that your site is user-friendly, is easy to navigate. The messaging is right there. We've heard about calls to action and scannability, but I think a lot of us would do really well to focus on testing as well. And so we'll get to that at the end. I'm just going to kind of blow through and hopefully get through all of my notes and all the slides here. If I go fast, I want to encourage you, like Nate said, to bookmark this page. And I'd also say subscribe to the Show It YouTube channel, because we have things like this coming out all the time, webinars. We've got another webinar coming up next week with Davy Jones to talk about Facebook ads and Facebook marketing. So there's always great content here, but come back, watch this again. And if it's too much to handle all together, like pick one of these things. Pick user experience, pick calls to action and scalability, or pick testing, and really just focus on that for a few weeks or a month or a season. Master that, and then come back and try to pick up something else. So let's talk about user experience for a second. Really, the simplest definition of user experience is putting yourself in the shoes of the people that visit your website or use your app or use your product, and building it or designing it in such a way that it has that idea in mind. So putting yourself in the shoes of the people that visit your website. And the key question to ask when it comes to conversion and people who are visiting your website is, why would someone say yes to me and say no to everyone else? Right? Like why would somebody pick me over somebody else? And a good outline to follow, the simple answer is, if you can meet their needs in a way that no one else can, right? Someone's going to choose you versus everyone else. If they find in you this unique ability to speak straight to their needs, their desires, and their heart, and connect with them in a meaningful way, they're going to say yes to you. So then the question becomes, how do we figure out needs? And this is something that psychologists have been trying to do for ages. And now in the user experience age of digital media and the online world, like UX designers are trying to figure out the psychology of a user. But I think it really goes back to, my old psychology class in college. And that is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And you've probably seen this before, and some of you are probably rolling your eyes like we're about to get into a psychology discussion. And I just want to briefly point this out just to make a point, right? Like every person has hierarchy of needs, right? They have basic needs, they have psychological level needs, and they have self-fulfillment needs. And so I call those in the UX world low-level needs, mid-level needs, and high-level needs. And what happens most of the time when people are building a website is they barely make it past the mid-level needs. And most of us are barely even skimming the surface of our mid-level needs, right? Like we stay towards the bottom. We stay towards our basic needs without going all the way to the top. And so, it's kind of like the old adage that nobody buys a drill because they want a drill. Have you heard this before, right? Like nobody buys a drill because they want a drill. People buy a drill because they want a hole in the wall. And so if you go even further, people don't buy a drill because they want a hole in the wall. They buy a drill because they want to hang pictures on the wall. And you can keep going even further. You can say people don't buy a drill so they can put a hole in the wall so they can hang pictures on a wall. They buy a drill so that they can put memories of their family on their wall so they can remember how much they love the people around them, right? And then you can go even further and you can say what they really care about is having a fulfilled life, that they are firing on all cylinders, living at the maximum level that they possibly could. And so the higher you go and the more you speak to those higher levels, the better off that you will be when it comes to conversion rate optimization. And I love what Zig Ziglar said. And he's an old guy. He wears bow ties, but he still has a lot of relevancy to people today. He says, needs and wants are often masked by symptoms. And the salesperson who sales to the symptoms fails to make sales. And so if you are setting your website up in such a way that you are selling to a symptom, right? And so the symptom for photographers would be somebody needs photos for an event, for their family, for senior portraits, for their wedding, right? Like that's the basic need. And so if that's as far as you go, you're going to lose a lot of potential clients. So let's take a look at some examples of
Chris,
basic...
Before you jump into some examples, I want to chime in. This is so good. I want to anchor this in some of the analogies that I've used before, where if we look back at what's already working in anybody's business. When I do coaching calls, I love how you say, let's start the end goal, right? That end goal is to get a booking. So let's look at that. I think where some of the traps of online marketing is we think that it's way different than just what we do face to face. So I want to see some participation here. Guys, give me the number out of 10. How many face-to-face consults do you turn into bookings? Like booked weddings, booked clients, whatever it is. That would be called your face-to-face meeting conversion rate, right?
Yeah.
So if we start there, as long as that number's high, now we want to take all of those things that you naturally do face-to-face and start to apply some of that in person. And what I'm excited for Chris to show us here is ways to test it, because just on a coaching call I had last week, somebody said, you know what, when I'm face-to-face and I start going through my pricing, or I start talking about this thing, or I make a joke that doesn't land, I can see the person's body language. I can see that I made a mistake there, right? And I can correct, and I can learn from it. One of the biggest challenges with online is we don't see when we've made a mistake. We don't see when somebody bounces off our site. We don't see what words on our site are turning them off until we start to use some of these testing tools or these different ways of thinking about how we're designing our site. It's so good. So I love everybody saying 90, 75%, all of that stuff's great. And so here's the good news is a website that turns 1% of your visitors into customers, that's pretty good. We're gonna start understanding how we can improve that number. So keep going along. I love this idea of making sure we're not just selling to the symptom, but we're digging deeper into that higher level way of thinking from Maslow's hierarchy. Good stuff.
Yeah, thank you, Nate, and good thoughts too. I think to kick it back to speaking to low level needs versus high level needs, some examples of a low level, would be I take pictures of you on your wedding day, and if you've read StoryBrand or Donald Miller's new book, Simple Marketing, like he suggests that the very first thing that people see, the biggest header on a website, would be just a really simple phrase that is really crystal clear about what you do and who you serve, and then how to take the next step. And so these would be some great examples of things that you could put up there as far as higher level things. So low level would be I take pictures of you on your wedding day. Mid level would be I take beautiful photos of you on your wedding day. And I see a lot of people do this, and you can probably chime in as well. But a lot of people, they try to sell on the basis of, or they try to book or convert clients on the basis of expertise, on the basis of skill level, on the basis of years that they've been doing it. They try to do it on the publications that they've been featured in. And all of those are great. Like all of those are fantastic. But honestly, that's not the main reason why people are buying from you. Like you need a little bit of proof. You need people to see that, you're not just crazy and you're not saying things about yourself that aren't true. Like there's some folks that can back you up. But the highest level would be something like I take the kind of pictures that your friends look at and wish their wedding was as amazing as yours, right? Like, so that's spoken to the core of the desire of a person. And, another one, I take the kind of photos of your family that will make your kids think you're cool, right? Like, so thinking down to generations, another one, I'm the kind of photographer that will make your wedding day feel as stress-free as going to the spa, right? So you've painted an incredibly clear picture that you now have to present to them that speaks to a really high-level need that somebody is going to be looking for. So once you dial that in, once you figure out what your ideal customer is looking for and how you can speak to that really clearly on a high-level need, you're not done.
It's so great. Let's tie it again back to just like a coffee with a potential client. There's timing, right? Eventually, there's a right time for you to talk about your experience. But if if you're sitting down for coffee and you just instantly go into, oh yeah, I'm Nate Grack. I'm an award-winning photographer from the Twin Cities. I've done this and I've done this, I've done this and that. And you don't once ask a question about them, or you don't once talk about the problem you solve. I think Donald Miller's new book says it talks this concept of curiosity is the first step. Before you can teach them anything about yourself, your headline, your first impression has to pique their curiosity so that they want to stop, because the first thing that the brain is doing is sorting between, is this going to help me survive and thrive, or is this just more noise? And there's more noise than ever now. So the first thing is, okay, yeah, maybe this person could help me. And they're not talking about themselves. They're talking actually about me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and Donald Miller talks a lot about this as well, Nate, of you're not trying to be the hero of your client's story. You're trying to show them how you can help them become the hero of their own story. And I saw in the comments some people talking about the high level number 3, not wanting to play on people's envy. And this all goes back to the type of person that you define as your ideal client, right? You have to say what's at the core of who they are, and if that's not the core problem or the core need that then they have, then yes, for sure, figure out something else that speaks more to them. So now let's talk about how we tie in who you are with what your client really needs. And so you do that by first understanding your personality and your expertise. And a lot of people, I think, they understand the expertise part like we've talked about, but they really don't understand how their personality plays into how they're reaching out and connecting with their ideal clients. And if something is going to set you apart more than everything else, the ace in your pocket, the key differentiator between you and every other person is your own unique personality. And so if you are not expressing that or showing that within your website or how you're messaging yourself on your website, right, clients are going to have a hard time connecting the dots between their need and you meeting that need, right? And Donald Miller talks a lot about clarity, right? When you communicate your personality through the visuals on your website, through the messaging on your website, in a clear way, like it makes it much easier for a client to say yes to you. And you don't want to try to be something that you're not. Like if you're somebody who's like super on edge, and somebody pops a balloon in another room and you're like shaking for the rest of the day, don't communicate that you're some easygoing photographer who's just going to put them all at rest and make them feel wonderful all the time. Think about something else that ties your personality a little bit better into who you are and what you do and how you can meet their needs. For instance, okay, hold on, let me look back here. You could be fun, you could be quirky, you could be a detail-oriented person. There isn't one personality that has the corner market on anything. I think we give a lot of weight to people who are extroverted, especially when it comes to a service-based business. But I know some of the most introverted people that I know have amazing photography companies. They are book solid and they are absolutely crushing it. But they're doing a great job and they're connecting their personality with, the personality and the needs of their clients as well. So let's talk about expertise. You really have to think about what you're really good at that other people might struggle with. This could be in photography or technically related, but it doesn't have to be. There's a book by a guy named Pat Flynn. He runs Smart Passive Income podcast. Highly encourage you to listen to that. He's got a book called Will It Fly? And he said one of the best ways to figure out what your core competencies are, what your unique expertise is to ask the people closest to you. And I've done this before, and it's been super helpful, right? Like people have been able to see things in me, because a lot of times we have a tough time seeing in ourselves what other people are able to see in us. And so when you invite your friends, invite your family, hey, what are my strengths in my photography business? What would you say I'm really good at? Like you could be really good at getting candid shots, or you're like a pro at making every single photo look like it could be in a glamour magazine. And I love what one shotier had to say, and I'll pull up his website here so you can just kind of see it. See if I can do it. Here we go. He says that if Wes Anderson was a photographer, like that's who this guy would be, right? And when you look down his site, you're like, oh my gosh, like, yes, this looks like a whole bunch of Wes Anderson movies just took wedding photos, and so, that's fantastic and a good way to describe yourself and describe your expertise. See if I can make it back to my slides. All right, there we go. So here's the value proposition equation. Like, and value proposition would be how you're going to tie who you are with what your client needs. And here's a little bit of math. This is my geekiness coming out. This if stands for if and only if my strengths are congruent to the client's highest desires, then you've got your business true love. So this congruent sign is really important. You don't have to be an exact match, but you have to be close enough that a client is going to be able to look at you and go, yes, this is my person. These are my people. This is the person who's going to fulfill my needs. So, all right. So now it's time to make some new content, and it's time to look at your website with some fresh eyes, right? With who you are, what you do, and how you meet the needs of your client. And I'm just going to go through. I'll show you a few websites from some shotiers that I think are just absolutely killing it when it comes to this. See if I can bring it up. Cool. So here's somebody, and I love what she's done. She's a Los Angeles wedding photographer for fun people, right? Like it's just really simple. And it describes who she is, and the fact that she's going to make her sessions a lot of fun, right? And then you look through her website, and it just screams fun, right? She's making the connections between who she is, what she's bringing to the table, and what her clients need. So if you want a photographer who's fun, who's going to help you have a really great time on your wedding day, like this is the person to go to. Here's another one. And her website's having a hard time pulling up. Here we go. So this is Jennifer Young. She's a family photographer, and she says she's relaxed family photography in Brooklyn and beyond. And I love the idea that she's communicating that she is relaxed, right? So, family photos can be incredibly stressful. And if you've ever taken them for your family or done a family photo shoot, right? Like when you've got little kids or a crying baby, right? You're just praying and hoping that you get good shots. And so, she's spoken to that core need of being relaxed, of coming to it with a quiet strength. And so that's how she is.
I love that messaging, starting with that idea is so spot on. When I survey all of my friends, and I'm always trying to study and get they're putting myself in their shoes when they're looking for a family photographer. I was like, what are your biggest concerns about in time and time again, they've reiterated it's they're worried less about the photographer or the price or all the things that we think it is. They're like, I'm just really stressed about if my kids are going to behave. I'm worried about my kids are they going to sit still? Like, so when you can show that you can help them solve that problem, now you've piqued their curiosity. It's so good.
Right. And I think that goes back to an insecurity that we all have, that we don't want our kids to act out around other people because that's a reflection of who we are, right? And so in family photos, moms and dads are probably more worried about what the photographer is thinking about their kids than they are about anything else. And so if you speak to that right away in your website and just say, you don't have to worry about how your kids behave. I'm going to get the best shots you've ever seen, right? Like, oh man, like that's going to be really compelling for somebody who is looking for a family photographer. So, and now it's time to think about, not just your messaging on your homepage, but the content that you are, you're putting out into the world, that you're putting out into your blog. If you've got a podcast that you're podcasting about, you've got to figure out how your value proposition should be played out into the content that you're giving people, and not just in general, but also for this season that we're in right now. Because as much as we're probably all feeling the sting of COVID-19 and what's happening, like all of your customers are feeling the exact same sting, right? Like they had to cancel their wedding, and that hurts you, but that really hurts them. They've been probably preparing for multiple months, in some cases multiple years, right? And so now all of a sudden they're having to tell people, like, cancel your flights, cancel your trips, like we're no longer going to do this, we're postponing it, or whatever. And so if you pivot, if you shift and begin to put out content that speaks to that, that shows that you are able to meet their needs in every season, right? So not just in one specific place, but in every season. That makes you more of their ideal person to do business with. And so writing articles, so your wedding was canceled because of COVID-19. Now what? 5 ways to have an awesome online wedding that is 100% streamed, right? Like these are all things. I saw somebody put a post the other day of taking photographs of a Sims wedding, right? Like they were so sad that they had all of these events canceled that they just made a Sims wedding and took photographs of it and made a blog post about it. And I love that, right? It showed that they were fun. It showed that even though times were tough, like they were rolling with the punches and finding a new way to speak to their ideal customer, So all of this comes down to empathy. And like, I know a lot of us are hurting, but the more that you can think of the people that you're serving, the better you will find yourself making it through this season, but also the better that you'll find coming out on the other side, right? That people go, this person really served me when I wasn't able to give them anything, right? Like I had nothing to offer them, and yet they were still pouring into my life and the needs that I have. And so the more that you can do that, the more it's going to set you up for when we come out of this. So, all right, let's keep going.
I love that. As you bring in the next thing, I want to wrap up that part with I've read somewhere that empathy is the new currency right now. Like just in this stage, while not many people are going to be spending a ton of money, or they might be, people are going to watch their expenses a little bit closer, but they're still going to remember how you act. They're going to remember the content you put up, how you made them laugh, how you empathize with the situation they're in. And then as you've been planting these cool seeds for different ways that this recovery is going to look, I just had the idea that for this, as you can empathize with, if we think about the first weddings that start to happen again, it's not going to be black or white. It's going to be a gradual. And my one hypothesis is that some weddings are still going to be smaller than they normally would have. And that means I think there's an enormous opportunity for the photographer / videographer to capture the day, to document the day, even because a lot of people still won't be able to attend. So when you can empathize with that, with creative ways, you can maybe include people via Skype, I saw on my podcast last year, I had somebody surprise the bride with a Skype video call from an aunt from France who couldn't make it for other reasons. So we can get creative with how you can help document and capture and include other people in the day. As we start to come out of this gradually, I think that's a really cool opportunity.
Yeah, there's a great book by the guys, I think it's Dan and Chip Heath, and they talk about the importance of creating surprising moments. And it's so important that you do that, not just within your website, but with also the way that you're serving clients. Because, like when you go to a restaurant and you order a burger and the burger comes back and it tastes decent, you're not like giving them 5 stars, right? But if you get a burger and they throw in a milkshake and they ask you about your day, and then, you trip over something, the burger falls on the ground and they instantly go in and pick it up and give you 2 new ones, like that's a surprising moment. They didn't have to do that. And so right now you're trying to create those surprising moments with people, and not just for business, right? If you have the motive of, I'm just doing this to make a buck when this is all over, like good luck, like I don't think it's going to work out very well for you. But if you're just like, I just want to be a good person, and a lot of people are struggling, and this is what I have to offer to the world right now, then that puts you in a really strong place as a business as well. So, all of these things just kind of mesh together. If you're a good person, it makes for really good business acumen.
Everybody's chiming in. Yes, The Power of Moments. What a great book. I love that one. Just as a funny aside, dude, I knew we would get along. So we all read the same amazing books. People don't know why I named Sticky Albums Sticky. It was inspired from their first book, Made to Stick. That marketing should be sticky and memorable.
That's
so good.
Awesome.
Anyways, all right, keep going. This is so fun.
Cool. All right. Well, I got to fly through calls to action and scannability so we can get on to testing, because I think testing is really important. So let's just go through some really basic things. Calls to action are the things within your website, and this is real basic, that are going to ask people to take the next step, right? And so there are the 3 P's of calls to actions. The way I remember it is that calls to action shouldn't be passive. They need to be persistent, and they need to be pronounced. So not being passive, a lot of people use really passive language when it comes to their calls to action, right? So they say things like, click here, or inquire, or say yes, or let's do this. And some of those things are really cute, but they're not really clear, and they're not really, and they're very passive, right? You want to be somewhat aggressive with not being invasive with your calls to action. And it's a lot about showing customers that you are confident. Like, I hate when I go to a website and I have to look all over the place for just how to buy the product that I'm looking for, or sign up for a call, or schedule them to come and do the thing that I'm wanting them to do. You should have calls to action really clearly all over the place on your website. And so rather than saying things like click here, you want to say things like buy now or hire me. Rather than say inquire, you want to say things like work with me. Rather than say yes, which is like a cute play on like a wedding photographer, call to action button, you want to say things like schedule a session, book an appointment, schedule a meeting. All of those, the language that you use in that is just super important, and you don't want to be passive. You want to be aggressive without being invasive. So being persistent. It's not enough just to have it looks like we might have lost Nate. Nate, are you still there with me?
I'm still here. I just turned my camera off. Keep chugging along. You're good.
Okay, cool. Yeah. We want to be persistent. So there's been a few studies that are done on when somebody hits a website and how they look at it moving forward. So there are some studies that say it's done in an F pattern, right? So you start over here, you move to the right, and then you come back, you go down, you move to the right again, and then you come back, and then you keep going down. There are other studies that have said you go in a Z pattern. So you start at the right, move to the left, go down the middle of the screen, and then go back over to the right. So I tend to try to set up all the websites that I do with that in mind. So the top left is your logo, so you're saying who you are, and then you scroll to the right, and that's your first call to action. And that should be there as you scroll down the screen, right? You always want to give people the opportunity to say yes, or to book an appointment, to click that call to action button. Then you scroll down to the middle, and that's where you want your other call to action to be, right? So right there in the middle of the screen, and then you come down, and then you've got a value proposition about who you are and what you do and how you can meet their needs. And there's a lot of talk about what you should place where, but really the most important thing is that you have persistent calls to action. And it can't just be at the top, like you have to think of a visitor to your website like a squirrel, right? Easily distracted. They'll easily move on. They'll click away. They'll get a call. They'll get a text message. They'll get a notification from Facebook that's open on the same web browser. And that's it. You're done. And so if they have to scroll all the way back up to say yes to you, then they are likely to not ever say yes, right? So my rule of thumb is that at most, or at least every 2 sections, you need to have a call to action. You need to have something that someone is going to be able to say yes to you. So, and then the final one is it needs to be pronounced. And unfortunately, calls to action are becoming a drop in the bag, right? Like they're like bulletin boards on the side of a freeway. Like we've all just gotten used to them and we don't ever look at them again, right? And so you've got to make sure that there's something about your call to action that is enticing, right? That kind of brings them in. And I want to show you a few examples here before we move on, just because I think it's really important. So something we do at Show It is every call to action is one color, right? Like it's almost difficult to miss the fact that if you're going to take the next step, you've got to look for the blue button. And I don't know why Vimeo is not syncing up, but you scroll through and that's the case. We've stayed really consistent because you've got to be thinking. You don't want to have to cause people to think hard about how to take the next step, right? Donna Miller says burn as little calories as possible to take the next step. And so if they're having to go, okay, where's the call to action button? Where should I go? Right? They're burning more calories than they should need to. And so one way of fixing that is by making sure you've got a call to action that is the same color. Every single one is a blue color. Another way to do it is to have a little bit of movement in your call to action. And this is an example of a lead page. Let's see if I can find his call to action. Yeah, here we go. So you can see it just kind of moving a little bit. Every so often, it gives you a little bit of nudge with your eyes. Honestly, this is like a digital marketing landing page, so it might be a little bit more aggressive than what I would encourage you guys to do. But a simple solution would be having a little gradient that just kind of scrolls over when somebody hovers over or gets in that section. Another one, and this is one of my favorite ones. This is Pat Flynn's conference, and you can tell I'm a Pat Flynn fan. When you hover over his call to action, it turns into a GIF, right? And it's got these cool little things that happen. So these are the things that make it pronounced. These are the things that make users go, oh, you know what? This guy speaks my language. So again, you don't want to be passive in your language. You want to be persistent, having calls to action down the page consistently. And then you want to make sure that your calls to action are pronounced.
I love that. I'm now everybody's going to want like animated hover over buttons everywhere. There's always these new little tricks, right? I think another way I want to keep anchoring it in this analogy that everybody in a conversation with you, they're coming to your website at many different stages. For some people, it's their 10th time to your website. For some people, it's your first. And that's why being empathetic and designing a website that's going to fit for all of those people can be a little tricky. But I think these points are so important that you need a call to action that's there, that's direct and clear, that's consistent, so that regardless of what stage they're at, they can take that next step with you. Really good stuff.
Yeah, I love that. And there's a lot of info out there about when people decide to buy, and most of the studies say that it takes at minimum 5 points of contact with the customer before they say yes. And so you've got to think that and bake that into your website, right? That this might be only the third or fourth time, and so you want something that when they come back, is staying consistent. Like the consistent things are staying consistent, but it's also bringing them along on a story, that it's engaging them enough that it keeps them interested. if they start to get bored, like good luck making the sale, right? Because they're also visiting other websites and other photographers at the same time. And so you are vying for their attention, and you're vying you captivate them with what you're doing within your website. So, okay, I'm going to real quickly talk about scannability so we can get on to user testing. You make a website scannable by adding headers, lists, and changing the dynamics in size. And I think we all kind of know this, that people don't read websites anymore. They scan websites, right? Unless they're making it to the fourth or fifth time that they visit a website. When they first see your website, they're going brrr and looking through it. You've got about 10 seconds. And so when you look at your website, you've got to think, am I communicating clearly everything that I need to communicate in a 10-second time frame, right? And so if you're not, it's time to make some changes. So headers, are really simply the different headlines that we have on different sections of our websites. You should have a header for every single section of your website. And a little HTML stuff is there are 6 different sizes of headers, H1 through H6, right? And so this is what it looks like over here. You in an HTML tag, you've got H1, you've got your awesome header, and then you close it with an H1 tag. And just a little bit of info about this. You only want to have one H1 tag per page because Google is actually looking to see what's the most important thing on this web page. And that's how you get ranked. That's how you get filtered when somebody's looking for different things. And so if you have multiple H1s on your website, you're sending conflicting messages to both your users and to Google itself. And so it can ping you pretty badly. I typically will have one H1 and then multiple H2s, and then go on to a few H3s as it's needed. But bottom line is, it just make sure that you've got different headers throughout the different sections. Lists are really great ways for people to be able to see content quickly, to bounce their eyes and to look and to scan through. So make sure you're doing a good job with lists. I love, Jasmine's got a great sales page here. I'm pulling it up and then I'll show everybody. And she just does a fantastic job with lists here. So you look through this site and there's multiple lists on every section. Bam, here's a list. You keep going down. Here's everything segmented again. So that feels like a list, right? Here's another list, right? Here's another list. We keep going. Everything's segmented over here. They look like lists. There's bullet points that kind of just help you. Here's another list, right? So this is an incredibly long sales page, but you don't feel overwhelmed with the copy because it's set up in such a way that, man, like you can scan through it. You can see things that are important to you. Your eyes will go to things that are super important, and then you can keep going. So make sure there's lists. Make sure, as far as size goes, that the things that you want people to have their attention drawn to are bigger than other things, right? You don't want to have your main value proposition be the smallest thing on a section. You want it to be pronounced and stand out. And so think about it in that regard as far as scannability. And if you have a hard time, ask somebody to take a peek at it for you. Ask somebody if they can figure out what you're trying to say and the most important thing on your website by just set a timer for 10 seconds and say 1, 2, 3, go, and then let them go for it and see what they come back with, and then use that as feedback to go on and change things. Nate, do you have any follow-up for me?
I think it's so good. I think that I'm going to go back to the curiosity thing that I've been the filter I've been thinking about it through is they always say that headline comes from like newspaper, right? The job of a headline is to convince somebody to read the next part. And then the job of the next headline is to convince them that it's worth their energy, worth their calories to read the next part. And because we know that different people are coming back to our sites multiple times, there are different stages of the buying and curiosity, that as they're scanning, each headline is an opportunity to pique their curiosity. So like nervous about what to wear. Not sure what location you want to use. Looking for, I'm just throwing out examples where it's like if that's something they care about right now, that's the perfect place then to insert the list, where it breaks it up. It gives them an opportunity to go, do I care about this idea, this concept right now? And then you earn their attention to give them a little bit more clarity.
Yeah, that's great. Somebody asked about the ability to see HTML, and let me just show you that real quick, because it's actually pretty easy, and you can do it in pretty much everything. So I'm going to go over here, and this is Chrome. Chrome has a developer tool.
Ooh.
Let me just scroll up here.
I'm going to get nerdy. I love it.
Chrome has a developer tool. Let me see. I use shortcodes or shortcuts, so I don't even know where it is in these tools. Okay, so if you go to View, Developer, and then Developer Tools, it's going to pop out all of the HTML on the side here, and it gives you a whole bunch of options. But what I like to do is you press this little square with an arrow on it, and then anytime you hover over something, it will highlight that HTML in the section. And so, you can see here like this, this is an H2, right? And then you can keep going down. You've got to press it again. So another thing you can do is if you right click on anything and click inspect, it'll open that up in your developer tools, and you can see that as well. So I hope that's helpful. How many H1s do you need to have? You need to only have one H1 per page. And that's important in an SEO sense, and it's also important for the user experience as well. So, okay, let me come on back here. And now let's talk about testing, should we?
Let's do it.
So I mentioned a little bit, and we've only got a little bit of time left, and so I'm just going to kind of blow through this. There's two ways that you can test. The first way is from user testing, and then the second way is the nerdy way. It's the way that I love to do it. It's called data-driven analysis. And user testing, you could do that right now. And I mentioned it, having a friend scan your website, give you feedback. When we're all allowed to go outside and hug each other again, right? Like you could ask somebody in a coffee shop to sit down and just look at your website, buy them a coffee, ask them to give you, a minute and a half of their time, and just look through their websites. A few questions that we ask on our user testing at Show It is, we ask them to visit our homepage and then say, what do you think this website is for? Like, what do you think we do as a company? And it's honestly really telling, because when we were in the redesign phase for our website, one of our first iterations, we did some testing on it, and one of the gals that tested it was like, "Oh, this is a site for an influencer," and we were like, "Oh man, like we totally missed the mark," So, but thank God we tested it before we published it for all the world to see and had a little bit of feedback. So, just a little bit of user testing can go a really long way. And now let's talk about data-driven analysis. And this is probably one of the most underutilized ways to test things on your website that I've seen as a web designer. And so I'm gonna go to my screen, Nate, and just show. Here we go. We'll go back. We're going to go to a little Google Analytics. And
nice.
we're going to dive in and just kind of go for it. And I want you guys to not get overwhelmed at this. There are so many things on Google Analytics that are just not worth your time to look at, right? And it can get super confusing, but the bottom line is something that I think is the most important is this little tab that says behavior. And by its title, it's looking at how users are behaving on your website, right? So what pages they're going to, where they're clicking from one page to the next. Probably the most important subsection in this is the events. An event is anything that a user does on your website, from a scroll to a hover to a click. And when you dial in Google Analytics and set it up, like you can get a lot of data on what users are doing, and that will tell you exactly what it is that you need to be focusing on or changing or testing within your website. So for instance, when we were first starting to do our redesign, we were curious because we found that a lot of people were clicking view designs versus start free trial. And so we're trying to figure that out. Like, why are they doing this? So we tested it. We had some users that went to our site, the main button was view designs. And then some users that went to our site, the main button was start a free trial. And we determined which one was clicked more. And it turns out that it was the start free trial was actually being clicked more than view designs on the test versus in general. And so we were able to dig down and hypothesize, okay, why is that happening? And so then we made changes to our redesign based on the results of that test. Another thing that we found was that people are actually only scrolling, and I'll go to the events here. Like 50% of everybody who visits our website is only scrolling past the 15% mark from the top of the page. It's being a little bit slow here. So what that means, so if I go here on scrolling, so these are all the events in my event category. So we've got event label. Give it a second here. Maybe it's event action. My apologies. I'm just kind of winging it now.
This is good. I think that while that's bringing up, I want to catch everybody up. If anybody does not have Google Analytics installed, I would recommend just do a Google search, how to install Google Analytics on blank. On whatever platform you're using, whether it's Showit or Squarespace or Sticky, it doesn't matter. Just say how to install, or a WordPress site. There's going to be 1,000 ways to get it installed if it isn't already installed, but it's going to be unique. And as long as you just follow the step-by-step instructions, this is just one way to look at the traffic on your site, and it can get overwhelming. So we're going to go through some key things to look at and some other things to ignore.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ginger just asked, do you need a Google Analytic account for each site? No, you do not. You can put multiple sites onto one Google account.
Yeah.
And so like Nate said, I would encourage you just to Google your platform and Google, Google Analytics. There are tons of great free tutorials out there for how to get that installed. It's easy on the site design settings or the site settings. You just paste your Google Analytics code into a field right there. So here we go. We've got these are the scroll percentages on our page. And so we see that there's 15% from the top of the page to the middle 15%, and then down to 30%, and then on down to 90% of the full page. So we found that people were only scrolling, most of the people that were visiting our website were only scrolling to the 15% mark. And so we started questioning, okay, what can we do to keep people going, like Nate was talking about, like building their curiosity, going like, why should I scroll to the next section? And so we created some imagery that keeps the site flowing. We created some messaging that keeps people intrigued as they go along. So it can be so incredibly helpful to have this kind of data. And so here's the scrolling events. Let me show you the call to action events and show you how we set it up. And there's tons of ways to do this. But this is what we found has been the best that works for us. If we go to event label, we've actually created breadcrumbs on each of our clicks. So these are clicks on a call to action, right? So this was the home page and the hero, so the top section of the website, and this was the view designs button, right? So this past week, right? So if you scroll up here, you can see from March 31st to April 6th, we had 663 people click on view design. So 30% of everybody who is taking an action, who is clicking a button, is clicking on view designs. And so we can see so on and so forth. It also gives us a little bit of insight into what people are interested in different sections of our page. Like here's the pricing section. So we know that more people are interested in tier 1 and tier 2 than they are in tier 3. So we wouldn't really know that, and that just helps us. It helps us know how to set up our website, but it helps us know how to structure our business as well, right? Like if we know tier 3 isn't really speaking to people, we ask ourselves the question of why is that? What's the reason for that? And then we can make a business decision as far as that goes. So, Nate, any thoughts before I get? I'm going to try just to do a real quick tutorial about how to make a Google tag on and get some insight on some events that are happening.
Perfect. Yeah, I think while you get that ready, I'll speak to the most basic thing I think for people to start looking at would be bounce rate. So bounce rate is when somebody comes to your website and then just and leaves pretty quickly without doing anything else. So what that will typically tell you is that your headline is not piquing their curiosity, right? Your headline is the very first H1 like piece of text, the very first sentence, your very first image at the top. It's not speaking to how you can help them. So what would you, I'm trying to think of what is a good baseline bounce rate for photographers you've seen on your platform.
Yeah, it's going to be different for every single industry, but they typically say anywhere from 60, or I'm sorry, like 55 to 75 is a decent range for just about anything. If you see lower than 55, then it could be great, but it could also mean that something's messed up on your website and you need to kind of dig in a little bit.
Got it.
And then if you see higher than 75, it could also mean the same thing, but more than likely if you see higher than 75, it means that you don't have compelling enough content to keep people on your page and to keep them curious, like you've said. So I know we've got a lot of different questions about H1 tags and all sorts of stuff, Google Analytics. I just want to encourage you guys. I'm blowing through this because I feel like it's important to, if you just hear these terminologies for the first time, to go and do a little bit of research, and then also come back to this and watch the video again and try to bridge the things in your head that may not be sticking 100%. So
smart.
I totally understand that. And trust me, the more you look at it, because when I first looked at all this stuff, it was like I went cross-eyed, right? Like there's nobody that just looks at this stuff and goes, oh, this all makes sense. Like we all feel like kindergartners when it comes to Google Analytics and the dashboard and to HTML stuff. But the more you just keep coming back and keep looking up tutorials online, the more and more it will make sense. So, okay, we ready for a quick tutorial on
adding a tag.
Adding a tag. All right. Let me see here.
So will this work with your example? So let me see if I can ground this in some context. Let's say that your main call to action goal that some of you might have would be to schedule a call. I know more and more people are using scheduling tools to do like a pre-session consult, whether it's Calendly or 17 Hats, or everybody's adding their own. And it's not to get the booking necessarily, but it's just to schedule a call. Would that work with your example?
Yeah, absolutely. And you can have multiple tags on a page. You can set up as many as you want, right? Like there's not a limit. And so you could have, like, let's say you have a primary call to action and a secondary call to action. The primary would be book me now, and the secondary would be download my free wedding photography template, right? You could see how each of those are performing in relationship to each other by setting up a tag within Google Tag Manager. And so, I have tags for literally everything on every single page. Because I love data. Data is so useful for making design decisions for your website. So the more data that you have, the more it's going to benefit you and help you figure out what to change and what to leave alone. So is that helpful, Nate?
Yes, absolutely. So let's show me how you add a tag.
All right, so let's go into Google Tag Manager, and if you've never been there before, it's just tagmanager.google.com, right? So I've got a lot of different things here. I've got my own personal website. I've got the Show It website and our United website. When you're first getting started, it won't look like this. You won't have any of this, right? So you're going to want to come and create an account, and then call it, my website. You can leave whatever country you're in, and then add your URL, www.mywebsite.com, right? Okay. And then this is useful for the web. So then we're going to do create, and it's going to ask you, are you the owner of this? And I am not, so I'm not going to do that, but this is just an example. So then you go back to your workspace, and you want to create a variable with your Google Analytics, right? And so let me see here. User-defined variables. We're going to go into new variable configuration, and let me see if I can look it up here. Google Analytics setting. Okay, and then you're going to put your Google Analytics tracking ID right here. Okay, and you'll save that, and then you go back to your website, and you tie the website that you just created with that variable that you also created. So let me see if I can go back here. Just trying to make this as simple as possible. So,
okay, so what we're doing here is you're using Google Tag Manager as a way to install Google Analytics, right?
Right. Well, you're connecting your Google Analytics account to a Google Tag Manager. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So,
Perfect.
So you're creating that variable to say, for these tags, I want it to go to this Google Analytics dashboard.
Got it.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to go into show it here. And we'll go to default workspace. All right. And here we go. Here's all of the triggers. So here's the scrolling triggers that I've created. And so, you can just kind of see, I do buttons a little bit differently, but you saw here in the dashboard on behaviors, and then events, and we'll go overviews, okay, then I'm going scrolling, and then event action. So all of this are all of these triggers right here. So they all link together. So how do you set those up? First, we're going to go to variables, and you're going to want to look at configure. And you want to scroll down the page, and since we're just doing clicks, you want to make sure all of these are clicked. They're clicked for me right now, but they might not be for you. So you just have to make sure that they are clicked in place right there. Okay? And then we're going to go to submit and then publish, just to make sure, you add a version name. So say click settings. We'll go to publish. And while we wait, we sing like no one else is watching. Okay, come back to our workspace. Default workspace. And now we want to set up a trigger. And we're going to have a new trigger. Or I'm sorry, let me go back here. I think we want to set up a tag. All right, we've got tag configuration. And let's see. Give me a second while I scroll through this. Let's go back to triggers. I'm going to set up a new trigger. All right, here we go. Let's do click, and let's do all elements. And we'll do all clicks. I'm going to save this. Okay, so now I'm going to press preview. And so this sets it up in preview mode. Nothing is happening just yet. All right, and so when you go to your show it site, or whatever your site is, it should bring up this little preview box down here at the bottom of it. All right, so now anytime I take an action, anytime I click, you see this coming up in the summary right here. We've got to click here. We've got to click here. I want to see, let's set up a trigger for when somebody clicks on navigation, okay? So if I click on this, it's going to open into another window. So I'm actually going to right-click and say open in a new tab. And then we've got, this click is showing up right here. So let's look at the variables. And we're going to look at classes. And we're going to use this class to set the trigger and tell us how to, essentially tag that onto our Google Analytics page. Okay, let me go back here. Nate, is this helpful? I'm getting a lot of people saying that this is confusing. I'm so sorry, guys, as I'm working through this.
I think let's anchor it in the goal here would be to measure when somebody's scrolling down their page, or just so that you're seeing these specific events that you care about on your site. So for number one, you care that they scroll down all the way. Right. You can see that result, or you want to know how many times somebody is clicking on a certain button. This is a way you could use Tag Manager and Google Analytics to bring those two things together.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? To be honest, it's probably a little bit I'm probably a little bit biting off more than I can chew to try to just get everybody to understand all of these things all in this short little video. So
why don't you make a tutorial on that specific example? Let's zoom back out. I'm curious to anchor it back. So let's go back to the most basics. Would be number one, when you're working on some of these, we had really good participation and positivity in the comments on just writing headlines, writing content that really resonates and helps people get curious. And then asking. So step one way to test it is just to get feedback. I like using a tool called Loom, where you could ask a friend to just go to your website and hit record, where you can just tell them to talk about your site and what as they navigate it, and then give you that video. It's just one data point, one person. The other piece, how do you recommend somebody set up an A/B test?
Well, it's going to be different for each platform. So
yeah, of course.
WordPress has some great A/B testing plugins.
Yep.
That you can use. Sometimes you're going to need a little bit of JavaScript to fire off different things when a page is reloaded. So you really have to. My encouragement would be to just look at whatever platform you're on and just Google A/B testing within this platform.
Perfect. Yep, that makes sense. Yep. Okay, cool.
And
this has been so good. I think we got a little in the weeds with some technical stuff. I get there too. I love getting into the data and letting people make data-driven decisions. But this is really good place for people to start. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And sorry, I'm seeing a lot of confusion. I just want to encourage you. This stuff is not nearly as confusing as it seems when you're first just looking at it. If you give it some time, you do a little bit of Googling, there's some great tutorials out there on YouTube. And I'll make something as well and pass it along whenever we're done, when we send the replay, just so it's a lot more clear for everybody. And there's a question about if you have Google Analytics set up in Show It, do you have to set up a tag manager? And yeah, so anytime you want to have an event-driven data within your Google Analytics dashboard, you have to tie in Tag Manager, and that's for every single platform. Like just having your Google Analytics code is not going to be enough to actually give you the data that you're needing to see things on events. So
got it.
Yep.
All right, cool. So for everybody that's here from Sticky that's hanging out, we had some amazing attendance here, guys. That's so great. I wanted to help you guys make a decision. I know a lot of people on this call are at different stages of their business, different stages of their brand. Some of you have very simple one-page sites on Sticky. Some of you are on older platforms that aren't really designed to have embed forms or email capture forms. I think that Showit is a really good place to get a design that looks that's very modern, a design that aligns with your unique personality, and a ton of customization. The sky really is the limit with Showit. So when you're ready to get to that stage of your business, to really dig in and make your unique site, your unique brand, all your own, where do you think is a good place for people to start there, Chris? Is it in just looking at some of the available designs in your gallery?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just go ahead and pull up the Showit site right now. We have a 14-day trial that's really easy to get plugged into. Yep. And so signing up for that and giving it a shot and just bringing in, let me turn off this Google Tag Manager. Leave preview mode. And then I'll refresh here. Yeah, so you would just click one of these, create your site, or all of these kind of lead to the same place with the 14-day trial. And so give it a shot. Find a site that is uniquely you. You can even look in our demos here and see all the different templates that we have. We actually have a sale going on right now at store.showit.co that ends tomorrow. I think it's up to 30% off. And so what's great about this is you can start with a really good foundation, but make it yours really quickly and really easily.
Yeah, I think that's a place I would recommend people start. I think that one of the benefits of Showit and other tools out there is you don't have to be a coder, right? There's no custom code. And however, I don't want to underspecify the importance of a good design. And if you look at your custom design options in the store and all of the things, whether it's a paid design or it's one of the ones you guys have for free, building that from scratch is pretty tricky. That if you're not a designer by trade. And so it's so much easier to spend your time shopping around, looking at the design out of the box that is as close to you and your language, your vibe, your brand you want to portray, and start there. It's so much easier to start there than try to customize something from scratch.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Nate, thank you so much for being on the webinar today and
it's so great.
This
yeah,
with me.
I'm going to post here. I've got if anybody else wants to take a look, I have the link here to last week's episode we did talking about email as a way to continue the conversation when somebody's on your website to opt into a simple email sequence. So I just posted that link there, and I think we're good to go. Thank you so much, Chris. This has been a blast.
Awesome.
We'll have to do this again sometime. Hang in there. And thanks, everybody, for attending, and we'll see you in the next video.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all. Talk to you soon.
Awesome. Cheers.